Hello, I'm Nicholas Webber from Invica, and I'm delighted to introduce our two panelists, Emanuela Gola from Barclays and Chris Golding from SSE Energy Services. So we're going to talk in the next 25 minutes around the journeys both brands took on their digital inclusion. So first off, perhaps Emanuela, you could just introduce yourself and what you do for Barclays.
Sure. I joined the digital accessibility team at Barclays 3 years ago. So I've been working with hundreds of digital teams in Barclays since to help them make the services and products that they build as inclusive as possible to make sure that all our customers or our colleagues can use it with ease.
Great, thanks Emanuela. And Chris, just introduce yourself, please.
Yeah, sure. So I'm the the UX manager at SSE Energy Services. It's a role which I've been doing for about 1.5 years now. Prior to that, I was a UX designer for 3 years at SSE as well. So I have a background in web and UX design. Probably worked in digital for around 14 years now. I began to properly consider accessibility whilst my team and I were redesigning our digital style guide, and it coincided with some redesign projects we were doing. So it really sort of, the doors opened to allow us to properly consider that.
Could you, Chris, just start us off by telling us what your organisation's done to date in moving towards inclusive design?
Yeah, sure. It probably started with myself and my own team, actually. But so whilst SSE puts a high value on our vulnerable customers, I think the only qualified people really within digital to understand and introduce this sort of standard of inclusive design was my team. So I'd have to say the drive and the heartbeat of inclusive design, it came from the UX team and then the wider digital team, my colleagues that I work with. I'd say that I came to the conclusion quite early on that inclusive design is really just another way of describing good design. I mean, for instance, how could you say your product is successful if up to a fifth of your customers can't use it or struggle to use it effectively? So, and as a designer, if you're the one doing the work, how can you be okay with that if a fifth of your customers can't use it? So I think the UX team and I were an engaged and driven group of professionals. We had a good appreciation of what we needed to achieve, and we wanted to hit a high standard of design.
Mm-hmm. And Emanuela, same question to you. How's Barclays moved towards inclusive design over the past?
Well, as I'm sure you can appreciate, Barclays is a huge organization. It's really, really big, definitely the biggest I've ever worked for. So my team realized soon that to make thousands of people care about accessibility, we needed to change the mindset of everybody in the company, which clearly was a big challenge to start with a few years ago. And the way we approached it was by focusing on 3 key areas, which we believe are key to change the mindset of people around accessibility. So the first key area we focus on is what we say inspiring hearts. So we want our colleagues to understand why they should care about accessibility. It's so easy to talk about legislation, reputation risk, commercial benefit, but this is not going to change people's mindset. People are just going to do it because they have to, but they will not understand what the impact of accessible products is for real people out there. So we run lots of activities to build the empathy, so to make people really understand what the impact of an accessible or inaccessible product is for someone. So for example, we run user testing so that colleagues can come and observe someone using the products. We even, a couple of years ago, we even made some of our colleagues wear age simulation suit and asked them to do some activities so they could try firsthand what the challenges for someone who is older, maybe trying to use the products. So lots of different activities around building the empathy. And once people are inspired, we need to give them the knowledge they need to actually build accessible products. So that's what we call educating heads. So we want to give them the skills, the knowledge they need. So we run lots of training, online webinars. we produce videos, we produce posters and so on. And finally, when everybody's on board, everybody cares about accessibility, everybody has the knowledge to build accessible products, we need to give them the tools to do so. So that's the third areas we focus on, which is what we call the enabling hands. So make sure that our colleagues have, for example, the testing tools they need to test for accessibility. You know, they use, for example, content management systems, which allowed for the creation of accessible content. They use pattern libraries, which with good accessible examples in there, which again, seems really easy, but for such a big organization, and especially a bank where lots of those tools are normally blocked by security, it was quite a challenge to make some of them available to our colleagues. But yeah, so by focusing on inspiring hearts, educating heads, and enabling hands, we really managed to make the cultural shift in our organization happen.
And what inspired the change? Why did Barclays decide now was the time to focus on this?
The change came a couple of years, or maybe more now, 3 or 4 years ago now, when the person who was the CEO for Barclays UK at the time made a public statement about Barclays wanting to become the most accessible and inclusive FTSE company. So clearly that was quite a big statement, and everybody in Barclays started being a bit worried about what we promised we would do, but that was so important because now we actually have, now that we made that statement public, we have to do something to actually achieve what we say we would achieve. So that was a great motivator.
And Chris, what was the prime motivator for SSE to get involved in this?
It's probably two things in equal measure. I think at SSE there is a bit of a driving force from the business itself around what they call treating customers fairly, or TCF. So that's kind of a culture that's baked in to the business, which is around putting customers first. So there's always this sort of mission that's in the back of our heads that we knew about, and that we could really get some buy-in, some stakeholder engagement from the wider business around treating customers fairly. But at the same time, I think how it happened was from my team wanting to consider accessibility in their design patterns. I think, as I alluded to before, you've got this project that kicked off, and at the same time as redesigning these new product sign-up journeys, we were enabled to produce a brand new style guide. So with that, obviously, you're then considering things like typography and color contrast. And then eventually what we did was we did accessibility audits, we did lab user testing with customers of different impairments, etc. It was really down to my team professionalism and wanting to do a good job and wanting to verify everything we do with the real customers. It's more, I guess, just as professional UXers, we wanted to consider all the needs of our customers, as well as knowing that the business would buy into that and we could take them with us on this journey, show them the user testing firsthand, get these stakeholders into the sessions with us. It's a really powerful thing, and no one can argue with the findings because they're not opinion anymore, it's research.
And how did you find getting the buy-in for all of this? Was there a number of different things you had to do to try and get everyone to see what you were trying to achieve?
Yeah, I mean, it's the same with stakeholders in any project, really. As long as you engage them off the bat, straight away and at regular checkpoints throughout a project, then they're interested, and it's on you as a designer and your team to get these stakeholders interested. So we did that, through planning sprints, through engaging the whole of digital, and then getting stakeholders sort of embedded within these reviews. That was really helpful. But the most powerful thing is the research, when you see research firsthand. I suppose the other thing is stakeholder.
Those were the key things. The fact you had empirical information that was indisputable, that helped your cause.
And you do have areas of the business that are intrinsically interested in looking after vulnerable customers. There are that's kind of their job. So if you can get these people involved as well, and that ties into one of the business goals, then you're onto a winner.
Yes. And Emanuela, what sort of challenges did you face in a huge organisation trying to get everybody to see it the way you saw it?
I think the biggest challenge was and still is in part making people understand that we don't do it just because we have a legal obligation like every company has. We want to do it because that's the right thing to do, because we want to empower our customers. We don't want to put limits. We don't want to make their life more difficult than it is. We actually want to make sure that everybody can manage their money independently. So as I said, it was quite a challenge to change that mindset. So there were lots of teams which had these long checklists, and they were just, ticking off check after check without actually understanding why they had to do it.
Yes.
And until you really, as we've all said, until you actually see someone using your products and see, the frustration and the challenges, you will not understand why you have to do it. So that was probably the challenging part.
And what are the results that you're seeing as a result of doing all of this? What results are you seeing from this?
I mean, in terms of products that we were made accessible to our customers, we definitely had lots of great achievements, that we're very proud of. So we did receive some awards, for example, from the Business Disability Forum for our accessible pin sentry, which is a kind of little device that our customers need to use to access our online banking, for example. And we did get accreditation from external consultants for some of our digital products as well. Having said that, to me personally, the biggest result, the one I'm the most proud of, is again seeing that people have started caring about accessibility. So just the fact that 3 years ago when I started Barclays, I had to explain to people over and over and over what accessibility means, why it's important, why we should care. And now actually it's very rare that I have to have that conversation with some of the internal teams, and not only internal teams, even the suppliers we work with.
Mm-hmm.
It's great to see that by working with suppliers and requiring them to provide accessible products to us, we're actually changing the mindset of other companies as well. And in turn, they become advocates for accessibility for other companies they work with. So it's great to see the work we're doing actually impact other companies as well.
And Chris, what have you seen so far from the work you've been doing? What results coming through?
Yes, it's one of those questions, isn't it? How do you really measure the effect of accessibility in isolation? I'd say that you can't, but what you can do is tie it into the results of the projects you deliver commercially. So what I could say probably is that the customer sign-up journeys exceeded sales targets. The fact that we considered accessibility within our design patterns and what we delivered and it was verified just meant that no one could argue it and everyone could start to get behind it a bit. There are other things like we had a recent Uswitch award for the best large energy supplier website. I guess they must consider how usable it is for everyone within how they market. Also, there was loads of overwhelmingly positive customer feedback from our lab user testing of the 3 sign-up journeys that we did. That goes beyond just the regular customer user testing, but into the guys who were dyslexic or hard of hearing, hard of sight. From a personal point of view, actually seeing people who do have an impairment get on with our journeys and compare them at the end to other experiences they might have had with a competitor or with another service provider, that sort of first-hand insight just verified to me and the team that we were doing the right things. Because from what I can make out, these really good, fully usable experiences for the full customer range are quite rare.
And I guess the challenge is, as you said earlier, you can't put an easy number on all of it, but I guess you can also take a view that if the journey is working for everybody, you can soon see how effective it is for everybody in getting your sign-ups increased and how people are using the site and all the other metrics that you might be measuring.
That's right, and I would, I mean, you could tie it back to some sort of statistics when you look at, I think it's 1 in 5 of the UK population could be are disabled in some way or another. So actually, when you think about that, and you think about our business itself, which is selling energy, broadband, and boiler care to the entire UK population, because everyone needs energy for a start.
Yes.
Well, you could start to quantify and say, well, loosely speaking, a fifth of our profit could be put down to many of these customer types.
Now, Emanuela, you explained a lot about the culture of digital inclusion, and one of the successes you feel is very much how you've gone about getting people to think that way. If a company's starting out on the digital inclusion journey, what would you advise them to do to try and develop this sort of culture?
My biggest advice would be to never give up. So to be prepared, it's going to be a long journey. Accessibility doesn't happen overnight. Changing someone's mindset will take time. You will get there. You will definitely get there as long as you're passionate about accessibility and inclusion. But yeah, just celebrate every small step you make, every small improvements. Don't expect to be perfect tomorrow.
And what sort of barriers did you come across? Was it that many people didn't ever think about it before? They didn't know much about it? What were the things you had to overcome in order to get the culture more widely adopted?
I guess, as I mentioned before, because Barclays is such a big organization, there were lots of obstacles along the way. So even when you have motivated people, as I said already, it was really difficult. For example, just to get a test tool to be approved in Barclay. And also because we do use lots of suppliers, again, it's not only what we build that needs to be accessible, but we want whatever content we get from suppliers to be accessible as well. So again, there's another level of conversation you need to have, especially if the supplier is a large organization provided the same product to lots of companies, becomes really difficult to ask them to make changes. But eventually companies do understand about making those changes. They actually improve the product for everybody. So they are quite happy to do it eventually. It just takes time.
Chris, what would you advise organisations who are just starting on their accessibility journeys? How do you think they should make that start, and what are the first things they should be considering?
I think if I tie it back to how I would run a project, and what we did in these projects was just identify and engage with the right stakeholders from the get-go. So understand who you're going to need to get behind what you're trying to do, tie in what you're trying to do with accessibility to the wider goals of a project. But also at the same time, I wouldn't underplay the role that Invika and Dig Inclusion had in our work. So it's really engaged with the right third parties. I mean, I wouldn't say that I and my team were at the time experts in accessibility as a sort of kind of a niche subject. So get the right guidance. You know, look outside of your organisation and get the right guidance. Get people to just help guide you through a structured process of considering accessibility at the right times. That comes down to doing audits before you go live, things like that. So that was massive for us. And talking from my own experience, I think if you need to find an angle or you're looking for an opportunity to kick off accessibility in your work, look for the big high value projects. They don't come around very often. So these three did all at the same time, and the stars kind of aligned. That the brand was slightly old, the digital stars were slightly old, so we could redesign them at the same time. We were re-platforming these new experiences as well, so the code could be done from the ground up. I think when these opportunities come up, that's when you can really make a difference.
Catalyst for you to make the case. They're big enough and high profile enough that then you could make the case and people bought into that.
That's right, and there was enough time within the project as well as enough scope. There's enough budget in the project that you can just kind of wean this into the fabric.
And Emanuela, is there something in your experience that you wouldn't do again?
Yeah, I wouldn't do.
Yes, that you would never do again. You learned the lessons. You know you wouldn't do that again.
I guess it's always probably going back to that checklist approach. So I will not give a checklist to a team again and say, you need to tick all of these boxes. I will not do that. I would actually talk about accessibility and all what we've said so far. So yeah, that I did try that approach a few times, didn't work. We ended up with something that maybe was almost technically accessible, but was really not usable. So no, that didn't work.
And Chris, is there anything you've learned on your journey that you wouldn't do again?
In hindsight, yeah. I mean, I would say not to our detriment, but it was relatively late in delivering these projects that we actually engaged with user testing with people with impairments. So that's something that you want to do probably throughout the design process, being an iterative designer. If I was to do it again, yeah, we would get the impaired customers in a lot earlier, with our medium fidelity designs, our low fidelity designs, our early ideas. But then at the same time, when you're putting an experience in front of a customer and you're considering color contrast and I don't know, the structure of a code base when using a screen reader, well, actually, how easy is that to do until you've got so far down the line with a piece of work anyway? But certainly just to at least consider how you can verify what you're doing against these customers early on. That would be what I would be more mindful of.
Well, Manuela and Chris, I want to thank you very much indeed for participating in this panel. We will look and see what questions have come in, and we'll be answering those questions very shortly. Thank you very much.